history this entire time? What if John Griffin wasn't just teasing fans when he said that the first episode contains most of the answers? Because after watching the season 4 finale again, I realized something that completely changed the way I look at this show. The ending doesn't just set up season 5, it actually points us back to the very beginning. Every major revelation, every character, every symbol, and every heartbreaking decision seems to echo something that was already there in episode 1. And the more I connected those moments together, the more one idea kept appearing over and over again. This story was never just about escaping a town. It was always about a cycle of memory, sacrifice, fathers, and children, and people repeating the same mistakes because they forgot what happened before them. By the end of this video, I think you'll see the pilot in a completely different way. And if this theory is true, then season 5 may already have been hiding in front of us for 4 years. So let's start with the statement that John Griffin made, because I honestly think fans underestimated how important it really was. Like, he didn't say that episode 1 contains a few clues. He said that most of the answers are already there. That's a very bold thing to say. Normally, writers plant small hints that only become obvious later, but Griffin made it sound like the blueprint of the entire series was sitting inside the pilot from the very beginning. So I went back and watched it again, not looking for monsters or jump scares, but looking for themes, looking for repeating ideas, looking for patterns that continue all the way into the season 4 finale. And almost immediately, something stood out. Episode 1 isn't introducing random events, it's introducing the rules of the entire story. Every major scene revolves around the exact same ideas that are still controlling the town years later: family, memory, choice, sacrifice, and most importantly, fathers. Once you notice that, the pilot suddenly feels completely different. Frank fails his daughter because he chooses alcohol instead of responsibility. Boyd is already carrying the weight of protecting everyone around him. Kenny is watching his father slowly lose his memories. Jim is trying to protect his own family without understanding the danger that lies ahead. 4 different fathers, 4 different situations, yet every single one is connected by the same responsibility: protect your family before it's too late. And that's exactly the message that returns during the ending of season 4. Think about Henry for a moment. His final scene shocked everyone because the situation feels impossible. Why would a father ever raise a weapon against his own son? At first, it looks like another terrifying cliffhanger. But when you compare it to episode 1, something interesting happens. The pilot already asks the same question in a different form: what happens when a father fails to protect his child? Frank doesn't pull the trigger himself. Instead, his weakness creates the opening that allows the monsters inside. The result is exactly the same. A child dies because of a father's decision. Now compare that with Henry. The man in yellow doesn't appear to force Henry physically. Instead, he manipulates his mind. Just like temptation destroyed Frank through alcohol, manipulation may be destroying Henry through fear and false hope. The town never needs to kill people directly if it can convince them to destroy themselves. Suddenly, these two scenes begin to mirror each other. One father opens a window, another father may pull a trigger. Different actions, same tragedy. This is where the idea of cycles becomes impossible to ignore. Throughout From, characters constantly believe they are making new choices, but are they really? Or are they simply replaying decisions that someone else already made long ago? Victor spends decades remembering things nobody else can remember. Jade experiences visions that belong to another life. Tabitha keeps finding places that seem strangely familiar. Julie has already shown signs that time inside this world doesn't work normally. Every season keeps suggesting that history is repeating itself instead of moving forward. So maybe the pilot isn't only showing us the beginning of one story, maybe it's showing us the ending of dozens of stories that happened before. Frank's mistake may not be unique. Henry's situation may not be unique either. Christopher may have faced the same impossible decision years ago. The original settlers may have faced it even earlier. Suddenly, episode 1 becomes less like an introduction and more like a warning. Then there's another detail that I completely overlooked until now. Remember how Ethan begins telling stories almost immediately after arriving? At first it seems like innocent childhood imagination, but later seasons completely change that interpretation. Stories in From are never just stories. They become reality. The Lake of Tears, the Cromanocle, the children in the caves, the boy in white. Every strange tale slowly transforms into an important piece of the mythology. So why introduce Ethan's imagination so early unless the writers wanted us to understand one rule? Stories create meaning, stories preserve memory, and memory is exactly what this town keeps trying to erase. Victor forgets, Kenny's father forgets. Characters lose pieces of themselves. Even Jade struggles to understand whether his visions belong to him or someone else. The opposite of remembering isn't simply forgetting, it's repeating the same mistake again because you forgot it happened the first time. That could explain why episode 1 focuses so heavily on memory before we even know why it matters. The pilot isn't asking whether the characters can survive the monsters. It's asking whether they can remember the truth before the cycle begins again. And that may be the single biggest clue John Griffin hid in plain sight. Now this brings us to what I believe is the biggest connection between the season 4 finale and episode 1, and it revolves around one person more than anyone else, Jade. At first, Jade looked like the least likely character to become the center of the mystery. He arrived thinking everything was some kind of elaborate escape room. He trusted logic more than faith. But season after season, the town kept pulling him closer to its oldest secrets. By the end of season 4, Jade isn't just another survivor anymore. He's someone who appears to be carrying memories that don't belong to him. And that completely changes the meaning of the pilot. Think about it. John Griffin said the answers were already there, so where was Jade in episode 1? He wasn't solving mysteries yet. He wasn't seeing symbols everywhere. But the writers deliberately introduced him as someone who always needs answers. That personality wasn't random. It was preparing us for the role he would eventually play. Because if Jade truly is connected to Christopher, then his entire journey has never been about discovering the mystery. It has been about remembering it. There is a huge difference. Discovering something means learning it for the first time. Remembering something means it already happened before. That may explain why every vision Jade experiences feels strangely familiar instead of completely new. The town isn't teaching him, it's reminding him. And this takes us back to Christopher himself. We still know surprisingly little about what really happened during Victor's childhood. We know Christopher changed. We know the boy in white tried to guide him. We know something terrible happened afterward. But what if we've been asking the wrong question? Instead of asking why Christopher failed, maybe we should be asking what he almost succeeded in doing, because every cycle seems to get closer to the truth before collapsing again. Christopher may have discovered something that frightened the entity controlling the town. That could explain why everything fell apart so quickly. The evil force doesn't simply kill people. It destroys hope the moment someone gets too close to breaking the cycle. Look at how often this happens. Boyd finds answers, then loses someone he loves. Tabitha escapes, only to be pulled back. Jay discovers another clue, but every answer creates 2 new mysteries. Even Victor remembers something important only for another memory to disappear. The pattern never changes. Progress is always followed by tragedy. Almost as if the town is correcting itself every time someone gets too close to the truth. Now think about the faraway trees, because I believe they are much more important than simple portals. Christopher was told to free the children. Jade is now following the exact same path. The children poured their hope into the roots, and those roots became the faraway trees. That line sounds almost poetic at first, but what if it's actually describing how the town works? Roots connect everything beneath the surface. Trees appear in different places, but underground they all belong to the same network. What if memories work exactly the same way? Every cycle grows above the ground like a different tree, but underneath they all share the same roots. That would explain why certain characters inherit visions from previous lives. It would